Hello everyone, once again. You're almost welcome to our YouTube channel, and today we are going to look at another type of information source, and that is secondary sources. That is the secondary source, and we are going to begin by defining what secondary sources are. Therefore, we can say that these secondary sources, if we are to define it, are the ones that interpret, analyze, or summarize primary sources or events. Therefore, these secondary sources are a one-step move from the original material. They often provide a broader perspective or critical insight into primary data. So if we look at these secondary sources, meaning that these secondary sources, they deal with interpreting what was already in the primary source, which we have looked at already in our video about primary sources. So at this juncture, let's look at the examples of secondary sources. So we are going to begin by looking at books. Here we can look at the history books analyzing a specific historical period or event. And in this case, we can look at those books which talk about historical wars. We can look at those books talking about all kinds of wars that we have ever heard of, like World War II and so on. So we can also look at the biographies that interpret an individual's life based on the primary source materials. As we heard that secondary sources get information from the primary source. As you have so many information sources here, journals, and so on, as you have seen. So that's what we can say about books as a source of information. Therefore, another source of information which we are going to look at is journals or articles, which are really common. As if, let me believe that all you have heard of articles. Are we together? So, concerning journal articles, we can see that articles that criticize or analyze primary data are sources of information which is secondary. So here we can see that articles that critique or analyze primary data might include research papers, analyzing the results of scientific experiments. It might be biological, physical, whatever experiment might be, and also include the literature reviews summarizing previous research on a certain topic of your choice. So next we are going to look at another source of secondary, that is documentary. Therefore, documentaries might be films or videos that tell historical events or individuals based on archival material, interviews, or expert commentary. Therefore, what you can say about documentaries, maybe the documentary of animals, videos that a video in a historical event, for instance, was how people took over power. That's secondary because it's informing us. So it becomes secondary because since we are not seeing it by ourselves, it looks like a secondary source. Next example of a secondary source, we have this one here, encyclopedias. Here, concerning encyclopedias, we can talk of entries in encyclopedias that summarize well-established knowledge or events on secondary research. So you can talk of Britannica, you can also talk of Wikipedia. So here you can see here Britannia, which is not complete, it is an encyclopedia. And also talk about this Wikipedia. So that's what we can say about encyclopedias. So let's go to another source, which is secondary. That is a source of information. and this source includes essays and reviews. So concerning essays and reviews, we can say that critical essays that provide analysis of a literary work or historical event, often building upon primary texts. Therefore, here we can look at a movie or book reviews that interpret the contents of a work, might be any piece of work. So what we can say, we can have maybe some books, whatever, reviews and essays, even including stories. So that's what you can say about some examples of secondary sources. However, these secondary sources have got various characteristics, and the characteristics include interpretative. Secondary sources offer interpretation to various primary sources. That's why we named it interpretative. Therefore, if we are to look further in this, we can say that secondary sources are interpretative as well because they involve some level of analysis, synthesis, or evaluation of primary sources, meaning that secondary sources evaluate primary sources. They explain or critique the primary source or the events that it represents. Next, we are going to is evaluate. Evaluative finally has appeared. They offer opinions, assessments based on evidence that may be drawn from the primary sources. Next, let's look at summary. So secondary sources summarize information often, let me say, to explain a concept, to connect various primary sources, meaning that secondary sources can help to connect various primary sources for us to understand or gain an understanding of what a certain primary source needs us to get. So therefore, secondary, this helps us to widen our understanding. Next one is contextual. Therefore, another characteristic of secondary sources is that they are contextual. What we can say about this is that secondary sources help to frame or contextualize primary data within movements or histories or broader trends. Therefore, this is what we can say about the characteristics of secondary sources. Therefore, secondary sources have a lot of things that they can do. Therefore, now you're going to look at the advantages of primary sources. One of them is that they provide critical analysis and comprehensive overviews. They help connect the dots between different pieces of primary evidence. Here, we understand that these secondary sources can gather the small parts of different primary information, whereby this secondary source, they put the small pieces of information together. It helps us to understand more. So this also help us to understand, so by gathering these dots between the different pieces of primary evidence for us to understand. Next is that they are easier to access and understand than raw primary data, as I've explained before. Therefore, next thing you're going to look at the disadvantages of these secondary sources. So, first of all, these secondary sources can introduce misinterpretations or biases. Here we see that when people get information from the primary source, by the time it reaches, let me say, the fifth person or before it reaches the third person, the information is already exaggerated. Here you can see that this can be due to misinterpretations. Next is this disadvantage, which says a seconded account, so they lack immediacy and authenticity of primary sources. Here in secondary sources, there is no immediacy. So therefore, these primary sources have immediacy, but secondary sources lack immediacy. And this is because secondary sources get information from the primary source. And for them, when they get that information from the primary source, when we go to secondary sources to get information, it would have taken some time. Therefore, meaning the information we have got is not immediate because it had taken some time. Therefore, those are some of the advantages I'm able to get. Therefore, we are going to look at the importance of secondary sources. These secondary sources have been of great importance into our lives. One of them, they help us understand a lot of things. So one of them is they help researchers make sense of primary material by providing expert commentary and comparative analysis. You might find out that secondary sources are easier to understand in most cases than the primary sources. Another thing that they help situate specific events or bits of data within larger societal, cultural, or historical frameworks, providing a fuller picture. So you can also say that they provide the necessary context for primary data. So here we see that secondary sources provide better interpretation of the primary data. So that's what we can say about the importance. And let's go to the next importance. Hope you have understood those first ones. Then this next importance of a secondary source is that they synthesize information to offer a wider understanding of a particular event or data. Then they also play a crucial role in disseminating scientific knowledge, educating students, and providing context for further research. Another thing is that these secondary sources are important in a way that they can help us in many ways. Therefore, as we have looked at primary sources already, these secondary sources also are as well important, meaning we will need both the primary and the secondary sources. So let's go into details about the differences between the primary and secondary sources. One of them is that for primary sources, if I'm to look, they offer direct evidence or first-hand accounts of events, while this side they provide analysis, interpretation, and commentary on primary materials, meaning that secondary sources comment on the primary materials. Whatever they bring, they get from the primary materials. So another one is that for primary sources, they are vital for constructing narratives and theories. Because theories, you look at them, they are exact assumptions. While for secondary, for them, they are just vital for contribute to understanding. They just contribute to your analyzing power and synthesizing existing knowledge within a specific discipline, maybe science, for research, and many others. As you continue, you can see that for primary sources, they are produced at the time as the event, phenomenon, or process is being studied. But for secondary sources, they are produced after the event, phenomenon, or process that has been studied, meaning they are produced when the event has already been studied. Next one, you can see that primary sources need interpretation, while for secondary sources, they provide a fuller picture. So, therefore, these moments, I'm really grateful that I've been able to listen. Thank you so much. Showers of blessings this week as you go through. So, therefore, please stay tuned. Feel free to share our YouTube channel with anybody if it has added something onto you. And another thing, please I request you that use this channel for anything that can help you. So thank you very much. Have a wonderful day. Please don't forget to share, don't forget to comment, don't forget to like. Have a brilliant day. May God bless you.